cricket questions.
Hmm.
Both cricket boards seem to be dealing with a couple of crises of sorts, starting with England. What's your take, Azeem Rafiq Nakul? What's the next course of action for England?
Just to say, the two are not equivalent in any way.
Definitely not.
The Tim Paine story is a bizarre case of really, really bad HR, basically, that has gone on. The fact that he was appointed captain when they knew that this was happening, and it's this recent Australian obsession with image that they know they're a very unpopular team around the world, the Australian men's cricket team, but they don't seem to know how to change that, because the culture of being hyper macho and hyper aggressive that came up with the various winning Australian teams has been retained without the winning, and now people think that you have to be that to win, which is, and I think this is just, we've seen a sort of reaction to that with Tim Paine being sort of being shielded from all of this stuff. I think it's that news breaking was a rare point of light in a very odd week this week. The Azeem Rafiq, and it's much broader than Azeem Rafiq. The revelations about systematic racism and institutional racism at all levels of English domestic cricket and indeed international cricket in some cases is genuinely very, very serious and will have long-lasting repercussions. And we're not even a week into this story yet. I live tweeted Azeem's testimony at the DCMS committee hearing earlier this week, and it's incredible, by the way, to think that it was only earlier this week, because so much has happened already since then, less than a week into the story, and it was harrowing. I knew some of it. We knew some of it. It was genuinely. It's amazing that someone has enough strength to bring that. To do that, and no one should have to be as strong on this matter as he has been. And now, of course, we're getting the backlash. And that's not to diminish at all. The anti-Semitic messages that he sent were awful. The behaviour that he's been credibly accused of, and I have no reason to doubt that it's credible, towards this young woman on a flight to Dubai, is really creepy. But we're under a whole different scale. When we're talking about the decades of people enabling and enacting and looking the other way to racist abuse and discrimination, and the English game is going to have to do some serious introspection, which has only just begun.
I think there's a question to be asked as well here. I mean, absolutely, he's telling the truth in his stance on racism. He does have some nasty skeletons in his closet, but those absolutely don't discredit or diminish his racism stance and the things that's brought up. But the third question that concerns me as well is who's orchestrating the dirt digging in an attempt to discredit him.
No, that's the right-wing media. That's easy.
That slightly bothers. Yeah, what do you say?
That's an easy one to call out. Of course it is, isn't it? Everyone's trying to protect themselves. But as Nakul says, are any of us surprised this has happened? No. I mean, crikey. I mean, you can see it. I mean, the amount of players that are of ethnic origin, ethnic players in this country who you see if you play club cricket, it's fucking hundreds of them. Clubs everywhere. I mean, there are clubs in the Surrey League where I play that are completely either Pakistani or Indian based, and then the amount of professional players
the stat regarding
public school related. It's clearly going on. I played, and this is going back to when I was a kid. I played minor counties cricket when I was a kid, and the majority of them were public school boys, and I didn't feel I fitted in, and I'm working class white boy, So, and that's that. Cricket in this country has always been kind of establishment, and it's quite surprising, to be honest. It's taken this long to come out.
There's some numbers that are worth paying attention to. The percentage of South Asian players the percentage of recreational cricketers made up by who are South Asian in this country, 30% of recreational cricketers in this country are South Asian. It's less than 4% of the professional game. The numbers of black professional cricketers has dropped from somewhere in the 20s to, I think, 8, was it 2 years ago? There's some PhD research that by a guy called Tom Brown, who's worth looking up, who shows that you are 34 times more likely to make it as a professional cricketer if you are public school educated than if you are black or South Asian, or a player of color of who isn't part of that, who isn't white, and we are at the very, very beginning of the reckoning of the scale of this problem. And as for the muckraking, the Yorkshire Post have been consistently on Yorkshire's side throughout all of this, which is where the story about his behaviour on the flight came from. And again, it doesn't. All of these things can be true at the same time, but they're not equivalent. And it's important that we keep that in mind as we go through this story, because, and I know from speaking to some people who are somewhat close to this story, including some journalists who are quite close to the story, and that there is more to come, and there are people who are working very, very hard to try and discredit Azeem Rafiq.
Yeah,
I think one more angle to that might be during the Ashes, is because it has been, I think, Gary Balance being Joe Root's roommate and all that has already crept up. I think I won't be surprised if at some point during the series it comes up in the Australian media, and they try to make something out of it for Joe Root when he would be out leading England. So
this becoming just another thing to sledge about is
but England,
horrendous.
Yeah, but England will be going to all the Australians, won't they? And who it'll be all the same. It'll be a little bit of fun going on.
Yeah, and one of these stories is something that you can really, really rip into someone for. And okay, not to minimise for a second.
Let's put it this way. Australia fucking was founded on fucking genocide of the Aboriginal race, right? So if they start banging on at us about that, then they don't really have a leg to stand on. So I don't think they really will go there.
Yeah, there's no one. There is no one standing. The moral high ground is completely vacant.
Yes, exactly. So you can't take it. Can you? You know, but.
In modern day cricket, I think with the stump mics turned up, I just get a feeling that a lot of keepers go slightly overboard, maybe to become viral.
This topic is too sensitive for them to get into any sort of a sledging.
Yeah.
Well, we do know, actually, I think there'll be a lot of things not said, and we already know actually that England have decided that no one is giving any media interviews for the next few weeks, which is very much not how England have been running themselves from the men's team. The England men's team is actually a very open organisation in terms of giving access to the media, and they've done that on purpose after a period where England became very unlikable in the public eye, and kind of as the rebuild from the 13-14 Ashes side, and it's really worked. And there's a lot of very likable people in this England men's setup, but they've now gone into this siege mentality, which I think is completely the wrong way to approach this. By the way, if we're talking as a reaction to the revelations that Azeem Rafiq and others have brought forward. Because I think the more open that you are about it, the better that everyone can move forward. And we can't actually, if you start to see this as just another thing that you're being attacked for and start getting defensive, then there's no hope of significant change. But if that's what they are now, imagine that the series hasn't even started yet. Imagine how defensive and angry and on edge everyone's going to be.
But I think they're in Australia. I think it'll affect them less in Australia. I mean, okay, the Australian press might ask them questions, but it won't be the British. Well, I mean, I guess the British press out there will ask them questions, but they're not going to get the amount of crap they would have got if this had been a home English series. It would have been all over the place. They'd have been constantly on it. I don't think they'll get that in Australia because they're the away side. They'll be different. There are different pressures when you're away.
Australian cricket TV broadcasting is not as critical or issues focused as English TV broadcasting is. Like, it's very hard. How
differently we might see the players of history if they'd had access to WhatsApp and Twitter. There might be a few. If you go back to Wally Hammond and beyond, there might be one or two that you think to yourself.
We know some of. There are some, if you read about the history of the Basil d'Oliveira affair, there's some very, very prominent people who had very prominent careers after that affair who come out of that really, really appallingly.
Yeah.
Hopefully cricket prevails, because that's what we are here for. But at the end of the day, But at the end of the day, I think Azeem Rafiq does have a lot of guts to come out and put himself out there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, justice is served in whatever shape and form, wherever it is. But this has been great. Look forward for the Ashes series. Tony, Nakul, Bear, thanks for making time, Bear, especially when you're not keeping well. Hopefully, speedy recovery for you.
I'm all right.
Great pleasure as always.
Indeed.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, guys.
Enjoy the Ashes. Thank you very much. See you later.
See you
See you
later.
guys. Take care.
Bye.